It might be the most sought-after cult object in history, the Holy Grail. Christians, crusaders, and Nazis have all tried to find it. The Grail promises power, influence, and eternal life.
I certainly believe that the Holy Grail could exist.
Which cup is the real Grail? Will the lead take us to King Arthur? Or is the crucial clue hidden in Da Vinci's masterpiece? Researchers are trying to solve this millennia-old myth. The great myths of mankind, mysteries passed on over thousands of years. Inexplicable events, places shrouded in legend, and superhuman heroes. Even scientists are fascinated. Is there any truth to these ancient legends? Researchers across the globe are working hard to solve the greatest mysteries of our time. To Spaniards, this is the Santo Cáliz, the Holy Grail. Valencia Cathedral has been its home for centuries. Believers think this sparkling vessel is the cup Jesus Christ handed his disciples at the Last Supper. But is this truly the real Holy Grail? Art historian Ana Marfa Garcia is trying to get to the bottom of this.
I am convinced this is the chalice of Jesus. It is the Holy Grail.
She's the newcomer in the quest for the real Grail, adopting new approaches, like using images of the Grail.
They inspired me to look for the Holy Grail in art history.
In her search, she pores over all paintings featuring the Grail. Paintings of the Last Supper, the origin of all stories linked to the Holy Grail. The Bible describes the eve of the crucifixion when Jesus asked his disciples to drink from a cup of wine, saying this was his blood that will be shed for everyone. A key moment for Christianity. Jesus promises to remain present in bread and wine. The supper stands for community. Those who drink from the cup are part of this community and can hope for life after death.
The Holy Grail is like a condensed conduit for the power of creation, which can be used to heal, to restore sanity. It comes in the form of a cornucopia, which delivers the sustenance of life and the womb from which life comes. You name it. The Grail, in its essence, represents the source of creation itself.
The chalice disappeared over the centuries. In medieval times, the crusaders revived the legend. They want to conquer the Holy Land and bring relics to Europe. The myth of the Holy Grail is born in this era. Christian orders of knights traveled to Constantinople and Jerusalem to free the holy city from Islamic rule. On their way, they pillaged cities and temples. At the time, relics, purportedly sacred objects, were highly sought-after items, like wood splinters or nails said to come from Jesus' cross, bones of saints. One object is particularly coveted, the Grail, the Lord's chalice.
I certainly believe that the Holy Grail could exist. So much associated with Christ was preserved and carefully looked after at the time, and the idea that the cup from the Last Supper is still there is, to my mind, perfectly believable. But the real question is whether it still actually exists in a private collection, perhaps even in a museum, and no one knows what it is.
Vessels that prompt speculation surface time and time again. Which goblet is the real Grail? Bowls made of wood or of precious stone? Celtic cups which allegedly can feed thousands of men or raise the dead. Elaborately decorated vessels laden with ritual significance.
What's fascinating about all of the different cups that survive, that claim to be the Holy Grail, is that they're all completely different. They look different, they're made out of different materials. And it makes you wonder what actually you need to have, what properties you need to have to be the Holy Grail.
Today we know that the object known as Nantia's cup from England is actually a fruit bowl which dates back no more than 600 years. The Sacro Catino, made from emerald, is a medieval Islamic bowl. Valencia. Perhaps this is where the real Grail can be found. This Spanish seaport was an important trading hub in the Middle Ages. Could the Holy Grail have ended up here? July 2006, Pope Benedict XVI presents the mysterious cup to more than 1 million worshippers in Valencia. It is a special moment for Christians from all four corners of the world. But to this very day, there is no scientific evidence that the Valencian chalice is the real Holy Grail. This is where the Santo Calice has been preserved for the past 600 years, the Valencia Cathedral. Closely guarded in a side chapel, behind glass and secured with alarms. Anna Marfa Garcia and German historian Michael Hesemann have the chance to look at the cup up close. Up until now, both have only studied the Grail in theory. They know how charged the debate is regarding the authenticity of the vessel.
Finding and in fact proving that the Holy Grail is real is important because it's evidence. If we find the Holy Grail, then it tells us definitely that Jesus was real, that the stories about him are real, and that the religions that rely on these stories are not just symbolic, but can be taken literally.
The Valencian cup can only be observed under strict security measures. Garcia and Hesemann are looking for clues that previously have been overlooked. The cup is definitely old enough. It was probably made about 2,000 years ago by Middle Eastern craftspeople. The researchers gather insights and facts to solve the mystery of the Holy Grail. The Santo Calice from Valencia. Could it really be the cup from the Last Supper? Ana Marfa Garcia needs more evidence. She meets Daniel Benito, an art historian. He takes her to the Colegio del Patriarca, a seminary founded hundreds of years ago. Garcia is looking for representations of the Holy Grail in art. She wants to trace it back to the artists who saw it. What did they know about it? The refectory is decorated with a 1599 depiction of the Last Supper. It shows a chalice bearing a striking resemblance to the Santo Calice.
What we see here is a conventional or even ordinary depiction of the refectory. It's the Last Supper of Jesus and his disciples before the Passion. It is usually portrayed from a theological perspective, focusing on the Eucharist. This is an archaeological and not theological reconstruction of how this supper might really have happened.
The most interesting part to me is that the Valencian chalice has a central position in this image.
No matter which painting Garcia examines, if there is a cup on the table, artists seem to agree as to what the real cup looked like. 500 years ago, there was broad consensus in Christianity regarding the appearance of the Grail.
From the 16th century onwards, in the world of art history, just one single relic is depicted in the paintings. It is the Holy Chalice of Valencia Cathedral.
But how did the Grail travel from Jerusalem to Spain, across the entire Roman Empire? Garcia's hypothesis is that the cup came to Rome at some point during the 1st century. There, an early and persecuted Christian community hides it, maybe in the catacombs beneath the metropolis. We can still see images of Christian ceremonies on the walls to this day. And indeed, the catacombs of Rome show a cup that at least bears some resemblance to the Valencian chalice.
When research into the Holy Grail began, it was fascinating to learn that there really was a primitive representation of the upper part of the Holy Chalice in the catacombs of Rome.
Garcia corroborates her theory that the Grail must have been in Rome with yet another piece of evidence. The first popes used this cup to celebrate Holy Mass in the underground. It's the era of the persecution of Christians. An old Latin text bears witness to how Christians used the cup for Holy Communion. In this text, the early Christians refer to the cup literally. During the ceremony, they say that Jesus used hunc preclarum calicem, this precious chalice. They mean the Santo Calice. Could the upper part of the Valencian chalice be the original, with the lower part being added at a later date? And if this is true, how did the cup travel from Rome to Spain? For 20 years, Michael Hesselman has been looking for evidence. He believes he is close to a breakthrough. His key to the Grail, a medieval verse romance, Percival. Written in the 12th and 13th century by Chrétien de Troyes in France and Wolfram von Eschenbach in Germany. Hesselman is certain that these ancient texts will provide crucial clues in the search of the real Grail.
Percival is a real treasure map. You just have to follow it and you will find the Grail.
Percival's story is unique in Europe. To fulfill his dream of becoming a knight, the young hero has to pass countless tests. One of them is to find the Grail. Percival arrives at the Castle of the Grail, a mysterious place inhabited by the terminally ill Fisher King, who can only be kept alive by the Grail. The king invites Percival to his castle. The young hero witnesses miraculous events. Food and drinks galore said to be provided by the Grail. Eventually, he sees the chalice being carried through the room. The text describes it as a shining star from the heavens. Is this merely medieval fiction? Hesselman is convinced there's more to this story.
Reading Percival, you will find the place where the Grail was hidden in the 11th or 12th century.
Hesselman has found a suspicious location in the text. Young Percival receives a description of the castle where he will meet both the king and the Grail. It's called Montsalvage. Michael Hesemann seeks to find this legendary castle in Spain. His quest for the Grail takes him to the Spanish Pyrenees, where the castle Montsalvage could be located. Hesemann wants to retrace the path the Grail has taken. He thinks that after Jesus died, the Grail was taken from Jerusalem to Rome, and later St. Lawrence, a 3rd century deacon, brought it to Spain. Hesemann drives to an old country house where the family of St. Lawrence lived. St. Lawrence tried to save the church possessions from Rome during the persecution of the Christians.
When the Roman emperor persecuted the Christians and seized all treasures of the church, Lawrence managed to entrust the Grail to a Spanish legionnaire, who brought it safely to this place, Lawrence's parents' manor.
The Grail remains hidden in the Pyrenees for centuries. Nobody knows its exact location, but Hesemann believes the guardians of the Grail used landmarks for guidance.
Behind those clouds lies the Pico di Gratal, the mountain of the Grail, 1,563 meters high. This was their marker. Behind it, the land of the Grail began. This is where we begin our search.
Hesemann believes the Montsalvage castle from the Percival poem lies behind those mountains. The narrow serpentines take him deep into the Pyrenees. Hesemann thinks the Percival epos is like a treasure map that just needs to be interpreted properly. Percival's first stop in the romance, a river where he meets the Fisher King. Hesemann thinks he has located the exact place of the encounter.
We can see the Rio Aragon here. Percival rode along its shores. And in the background, there is the Mont Salvatoris, the Pico de San Salvador. In the local Occitan language spoken in Aragon at the time, it was called Mont Salvage, and later this became the name of the Castle of the Grail in Percival.
The Castle of the Grail. Does it really exist outside the realm of imagination?
This is the historical path Percival took on his horse. Of course, you can't use today's roads, but have to investigate historical roads and trails.
Percival and the Castle of the Grail in northeastern Spain? The text comes with directions. At the foot of that mountain, turn right. At the end of the path lies an ancient building hidden below a ledge. The monastery of San Juan de la Pena. It was built in the 10th century, long before Percival was written. Today, the monastery is a Spanish national monument. Michael Hesemann finds depictions of the Last Supper everywhere, which isn't necessarily unusual for a monastery. But is this really the place the Grail was hidden? Hesemann is not the first to follow the clues in Percival and to end up in the Pyrenees. Around the year 1930, German author Otto Rahn takes the ancient text literally. His search takes him to the other side of the mountain range, to France. Rahn believes the Chateau de Montségur is the castle of the Grail. Later, he looks for the Grail on behalf of the Nazis.
All sorts of people throughout history have been hunting for the Grail because it's such a mysterious object. If you were the people who could actually find it after centuries of being lost, then you prove that you've got the power, you've got the legitimacy, that you were destined to own it. And that's exactly why Hitler and why Himmler searched for the Grail during the Second World War. It would prove that they had a right to be doing what they were doing.
Hitler remains skeptical, But Himmler, head of the SS, is obsessed with occult Germanic rites. The mass murderer firmly believes that he who has the Grail will be invincible.
Heinrich Himmler sincerely believed in the occult, which didn't just mean that he wanted to find occult objects. He wanted to make a mythic reality. He wanted there to be Nazi knights of a kind of new Arthurian order.
Himmler wants the Grail to be at the center of a new Germanic cult. He invests means and men in the search for the Grail, but to no avail. Otto Rahn commits suicide. The SS largely disregards the monastery San Juan de la Pena. The Nazis don't want to share the Grail with the church. Are they missing out on the most promising lead? If the Grail used to be here, there could still be traces of it today. Michael Hesemann wants to take a closer look at the basement. A local guide takes him through the monastic maze. The heroic epic provides an exact account of the rooms where Percival sees the Grail.
In the middle, he saw 4 pillars, and in between, a giant fire was ablaze. And here, he met the king of the Grail and spoke with him. And then he saw how a procession entered through the door on the other side of the hall, carried the Grail, carried it through the hall, and disappeared through another door on the other side of the room.
Percival witnesses an Easter procession, a mysterious ritual to him. Hesemann is certain this is the right place.
We can see 1, 2, 3, 4 large pillars here, and 1, 2, 3 spaces in between where the braziers were placed, because it was cold down here in April.
The Percival text also describes how the Grail is retrieved from a chamber. Hesemann believes he sees evidence pointing to this Romance verse too. He finds a small side room.
This niche, this chapel, is where the Grail was stored for more than 300 years.
The text contains another important detail. It references a baptism. What looks like water turned into stone today are actually calcium deposits of an old spring. This place was really used for baptisms. In the epic, the Grail is carried up a flight of stairs.
From there, the stairs led up to the church of San Juan de la Pena.
Hesemann climbs to the church of the monastery. If there is truth to the Percival story, this is where the monks must have worshipped the Holy Grail.
Looks like the entire description of the Castle of the Grail in the poem matches San Juan de la Pena. All the places, all the rooms are here, exactly as the text says.
There is some evidence that Michael Hesemann is right, and that there was a cup that was worshipped here in the Middle Ages. Is it the one that's in Valencia today? Could it be the real Grail? It will probably be impossible to prove once and for all that Jesus used this exact chalice. Truth is, the Valencian chalice doesn't look anything like the Grail described in Percival. It is described as a shining stone from the heavens. How does this relate to the Santo Cáliz? At the Department of Art History of the University of Valencia, Maria Gomez, expert for ancient artwork, is preparing an experiment. Ana Marfa Garcia wants to know if anything about the Santo Chalice could in fact point to a shining star from the heavens.
All literary descriptions of the Holy Chalice, or Holy Grail, agree on the upper bowl, the chalice, which is in Valencia.
De la copa que tenemos en Valencia. Espero que cuando pongamos el ágata,
I hope exposing the agate to light will show us whether it really shines the way it's been described in the medieval texts.
como decían los textos de la época medieval.
At certain light temperatures, gemstones begin to glow in different colors.
El color puede cambiar.
The colors can vary greatly depending on the light.
La luz.
Light has a color.
Un color que
Kelvin,
los grados-
degrees Kelvin.
Lo voy a
Let me
poner
give you an example.
con un ejemplo.
A painting made outside, like the picture Sorolla painted on the beach, was painted in daylight.
Esa pintura está pintada con luz.
If we expose this painting to warm light, that is 3,200 degrees Kelvin, it loses its blue color.
Luz cálida.
The color spectrum of the color blue
La
varies
cromática,
and changes.
la cromática de colores azules varían y cambian.
Fíjate que cuando estás
Look here. The stone has a red shade.
color rojizo, ¿vale?
We'll increase the temperature. We're increasing,
Temperatura
and it seems like it's losing its color,
que pierde,
like it's getting more yellow,
queda como más
opaque,
amarillo,
Más opaco.
Browner, even browner.
Amarronado.
even browner.
Is there a stone that shines like the gem mentioned in the medieval texts? The stone on the light table is an agate. It glows red like fire. The women are certain.
María. Hemos en-
Maria, yes, we've discovered the holy chalice in the stone. Look,
That's it, look. I can see it.
Qué curioso.
that's incredible.
Totalmente.
Eureka.
Eureka!
Yes.
Sí. Qué curioso, ¿eh?
The Santo Chalice, a chalice made of agate.
In Parzival, the Grail is actually a stone brought down from the heavens by neutral angels. And the only stone I know of that comes from the heavens is a meteorite. So if it is a meteorite, then it would be the common denominator between Excalibur and the Grail, the two most important objects in the Arthurian tradition. And both are divine right to rule, and that relates to the meteor, which of course comes as a light from the heavens, anointing the finder.
Spain isn't the only place where legends about the Grail flourish. Glastonbury, in the southwest of England. With numerous myths attached to this region, many believe the Grail was hidden here in the 1st century. After Jesus died at the cross, the other legend of the Grail suggests Joseph of Arimathea collected his blood in a cup and brought it to England. He's said to have eventually hidden this Grail in Glastonbury. It is the exact same place where one of the most influential monasteries of the Middle Ages emerges, Glastonbury Abbey. The magical ruins still attract tourists and esoterics alike, a magnet for myths. Legendary King Arthur is said to be buried here. Archaeologist Roberta Gilchrist tries to find out how much truth there is to the myths linked to Glastonbury.
Glastonbury Abbey is a famous medieval monastery, and one of the reasons is that it's associated with two key legends. One of them is King Arthur, and the other one is Joseph of Arimathea. And both of them provide a kind of origin story for the abbey. And this isn't a new story. These things have been connected with Glastonbury for about 800 years, so it's a huge part of the abbey's heritage.
A painting in the chapel of the abbey commemorates Joseph of Arimathea. It shows how he traveled to England with the Grail. After arriving in Glastonbury, he sticks his walking staff into the ground and it turns into a magnificent hawthorn. To this day, it is a landmark of Glastonbury and blooms twice a year, once at Christmas, a divine symbol of the birth of Christ. There are several of these trees around Glastonbury. Joseph is said to have buried the Grail somewhere here, but it has never been found. The second big story of Glastonbury Abbey revolves around legendary King Arthur. The myth says he's buried on an island named Avalon. Some believe Avalon and Glastonbury are the same place. The legends of King Arthur and his Round Table are inextricably linked to the Holy Grail. Finding it is the primary duty of the noble order of knights.
The myth of Arthur being linked with the Holy Grail is a very important part of the Arthur story because it makes him more powerful. It gives him the divine anointment he needs to make him into a true legend which can withstand the years.
In Glastonbury, ancient legends take shape.
In the 12th century, there were a lot of stories circulating about King Arthur, and the monks of Glastonbury connected the Arthur story with Avalon.
In their chronicles, the monks documented how they come across a tomb during renovation works. Inside, they find two skeletons, a very tall man with strong bones, and a woman, King Arthur and his wife, Guinevere. With this, they find a small cross with the name Arthur and make their abbey a place of pilgrimage.
We suspect that that was a forgery, something that they copied from material culture of about a century earlier, but that gave them a kind of relic, if you like, of Arthur that people could come and look at on the site.
Roberta Gilchrist knows that after a fire in the abbey, the monks were in desperate need for money. Since then, the story of Arthur's grave has turned Glastonbury into a tourist magnet, which it remains to this very day.
It would appear that once one myth has become attached to an area, then other myths start to be attached to it too. This is partly due to a coincidence of events. For example, at Glastonbury, we have the meeting of ley lines, we have the ancient church on top of the hill, and we have the burial of the Holy Grail and King Arthur. And because of this, these places become a place of pilgrimage.
Glastonbury is an El Dorado for all those on the search for life's deeper meaning. The priestesses of the goddess movement follow ancient traditions which believe in the maternal essence of life and earth.
People come here and search for the Holy Grail, but in my tradition, in the goddess tradition, the Holy Grail is far more intimate. It is really the sacred part in yourself. It's the creation. So it's really finding that sacred part in ourselves that we all search for.
The Holy Grail. Some believe it's an inner state of mind, but most think it's a real cup. A cup that has forged legends. But if King Arthur's tomb is just fictional, is it possible that the king and his quest for the Grail were never real either? Is the English lead misleading us after all? Many find this hard to believe. The search continues, like in Tintagel on the western Atlantic coast, where Arthur was purportedly conceived. Archaeologist Wynne Scott wants to go over to the peninsula. The bridge remains closed if the winds are too strong. What does the wind gauge say?
It's between 2 and 3 at the moment, so fine to go over.
According to the legend, this is where King Arthur's castle is located. It could be true, since the oldest remnants date back to the early Middle Ages.
So we're now crossing the bridge, across to the main part of the castle, where Richard, Earl of Cornwall, would have had his feasts. This was his great feasting hall. The problem is, the cliff was falling down already in the 13th and 14th century. So soon after he built this great hall, it started to fall down the cliff. So the outer building in front of us here is the first one he built. Part of it fell down the cliff, and then he built a smaller building, and that started to fall down the cliff. And then he built a smaller building, and that survived.
The hall falls into the sea repeatedly. Every time it has to be rebuilt. So the medieval people see ruins constantly and believe they are looking at the ruins of Arthur's castle. But on the island, there really are clues pointing to the ancient royal site.
So once you get outside Richard's castle and you go out onto the island, you'll find lots of buildings that have been excavated in the 1930s. But that's just some of them. We now know there's roughly 100 buildings across the island. It's in fact bigger than London was at the time. We don't have a site as big as this for the post-Roman period. 3 of those houses were excavated in 2017, and we found large amounts of pottery there. And a lot of this pottery is from the Mediterranean, from Greece, from Tunisia, North Africa, and also glassware from Spain and France. What it's indicating is that this site was very prestigious. It was a very high status site and really important. We think it's probably a royal site.
Tintagel was once ruled by a powerful man, possibly a king. Perhaps it was Arthur after all.
Well, the first reference of Tintagel in the legend of King Arthur is when Geoffrey of Monmouth, in the 12th century, said that Arthur had been conceived here. This may be entire fiction made up in the later medieval period, in the 12th century or round about then, because they knew of this as being an important ancient site. They must have been able to see the ruins right across the island. But maybe there was real folklore that associated King Arthur with this site. So it is possible, if King Arthur was a real person and lived in the post-Roman period, it's quite possible, since this is such an important, perhaps royal site, that King Arthur was very closely associated with this. So the legend might well be true.
King Arthur might have been a Roman commander or the chief of a Celtic Germanic tribe. But there is no hard evidence confirming his existence or that of the Grail. Have people been looking for the wrong thing? What if the Grail is not a chalice, but something completely different? Leonardo da Vinci's The Last Supper is said to contain explosive information. Visitors marvel at the mural in the church Santa Maria della Grazia in Milan. It depicts Jesus and his disciples on the eve of the crucifixion. Da Vinci lived in Milan at the end of the 15th century. A universal genius who allegedly put encrypted messages in his artwork.
Da Vinci is known for hiding secret messages in his works, and this is because he was much more than an artist. He was a visionary and an inventor and an intellectual. But in doing this, Da Vinci is actually operating a lot like myths. Myths are not supposed to be read literally, they are supposed to be symbolic. So in the same way we have to decipher the meaning behind a myth, we also have to decipher the message that Da Vinci is putting in his paintings.
What secret does Da Vinci's Last Supper hold? While it shows bread and wine, there is no chalice. The Grail should be right in front of Jesus, but it isn't. Instead, Jesus and his disciples all have their own glasses. Author Dan Brown puts forward a spectacular theory in his book, The Da Vinci Code. He states that the painting depicts the Holy Grail, but it isn't a cup. He points to the strikingly female features and the posture of the disciple next to Jesus. Could this be someone else other than John the Apostle? And there's more. Jesus and the person next to him form a V, the symbol of femininity and fertility. Dan Brown concludes that the disciple is in fact a woman, Mary Magdalene. She is said to be close to Jesus. They even have children. Is she the Grail? A scandalous thought for the Church.
If Mary Magdalene's really the mother of Jesus' child, then the Catholic Church shouldn't just be afraid of the authority that that lineage might have in competition with their own. The bigger threat is that it introduces a different path to the heart, to the divine, than is offered by the Catholics. It's a path of romantic love.
Dan Brown's theories are based on pure fiction, but he sold millions of copies. Mary Magdalene's role, however, is also contested by scientists. Is it possible to solve the mystery of the Holy Grail? Many Valencians believe there's no need to, since the Santo Chalice is the Grail. Historian Michael Heseman's findings also support this. He believes he has proven the chalice was kept in the mountain monastery San Juan de la Pena. But Heseman can't provide more than clues. The historian returns to Valencia to meet Gabriel Songel. The professor of design has discovered something that could corroborate the legend of the Grail with new facts. An 11th century list of all the properties of the monastery.
Everybody has already read about it. Sure. What I want to see is what people hasn't seen. That is the design that is inside.
People have known about the list for a long time. At first glance, it doesn't make mention of the Santo Chalice, but Songel has a theory. A secret encryption code could reveal hidden information.
The Bene Valete was one of the signals of the post. It's a very interesting graphic design based on the big N.
Bene Valete, farewell, is a seal of medieval popes. A capital N forms the basis. The other letters are ornately arranged in the N. How can this key help us find the Grail? Songel places it on the text.
This is a very important background to understand how they build this acrostic. Okay, you will see the big N, especially the letters L-I-S are separated. And what we see here is the C from the letter C on the glossarium. Chalice. Now we build this vertical line towards Jerusalem, and then we find lapis exilis.
These are the exact words Wolfram von Eschenbach uses to describe the Holy Grail in Percival.
So altogether, we're talking about chalice, lapis exilis domini. That means a chalice of precious stone from the Lord.
The medieval poet describes a stone from the heavens, bright like fire.
It's a sensational find. Dating back to the 11th century, this is not only the earliest document mentioning how the chalice of the Lord was taken from Jerusalem to San Juan de la Pena, it also features the term lapis exilis, which Wolfram von Eschenbach used in Percival, originally a chalice made of precious stone. But Wolfram continued his poem, saying that this could also mean a stone from the stars, from the heavens. This is his interpretation, but this document is 150 years older than the Percival romance, and it contains this term.
The raw material used and its age could indicate that the upper part of the Santo Chalice actually comes from Jerusalem. But is it really the cup Jesus held? A chalice made of precious stone? Very few people know as much about the Santo Chalice as Antonio Piro. Decades ago, the goldsmith measured the chalice with his own hands. Since then, he and his sons have been making handmade replicas of the relic. Now, Ana Mafa Garcia wants him to make an exact copy.
Un sentimiento de emoción.
Well, this is very emotional for me. As a choir boy, I spent a lot of time in the cathedral, and we would also sing in the chapel. And that's how it was brought to my attention. My dad got married in this cathedral, and so did I, which is why I have always felt a special affection for the chalice.
Un cariño especial al Santo Cáliz.
The art historian knows exactly what she wants. To her, only the upper part of the Grail is relevant.
So this upper part would be the sacred part of the relic.
This here, this is the Holy Chalice.
Right.
Without this part, I have already inserted this to adjust it.
Fascinating.
The chalice the Lord blessed at the Last Supper is this here.
Making the replicas just like the exact model of the original poses a challenge. There are two main problems: the material and the measurements.
These are the first sketches, the drawings from the time when we first started.
Wow.
Piro wasn't allowed to touch the Santo Chalice when he measured it. He uses simple tools. That's the stencil that allows you to see the shape of the bowl perfectly.
Very interesting. Of course, it's the best way to see if the size is right.
For Anna, it's the volume of the chalice that counts most because it sheds a lot of light on its origins. The material is also key. To comply with Jewish purity laws, the cup has to be made of stone. Wood is too porous, making it hard to clean, and therefore unsuitable as a ritual vessel.
The question of the properties of the Holy Grail are very interesting, especially the fact that if it was a chalice or a cup that were used at the Last Supper, then it would have to be kosher.
Jesus Christ is Jewish. He and his apostles follow Jewish laws and rituals. When Jesus arrives in Jerusalem, he is sentenced to death and invites his disciples for one last meal, the Last Supper. The vessels used for this event are ritual objects and have to meet certain criteria. Ana Mafa Garcia checks the volume of the chalice. Its capacity can tell her whether it was used as a ritual cup.
The chalice of the Holy Grail represents a Jewish supper, a Passover meal. 2,000 years ago, Jews had a family chalice that had to be filled with a minimum amount of wine to allow them to celebrate the rite of Passover, just like they do to this very day. This cup holds 4 fingers, which is half a span, and these are Jewish units, 2.5 revit. That's about this much.
The minimum they have to drink is 1 revit, 86 milliliters. Another revit is for the family. According to Garcia's calculations, the chalice can hold 2.5 revit, So it's possible that the Santo Chalice was really used as a ritual cup. Another part of the puzzle, a valuable ritual cup dating back to antiquity. Whether Jesus held it remains unknown. The longing for the Grail has left its mark on Christian Europe. It's reflected in myths and legends, in poems and songs. Is there at least some truth to all this fiction? In Valencia, people commemorate the festival of the Santo Chalice every year. To many Christians, this stone bowl is nothing less than the cup of the Last Supper. Michael Heseman and Ana Marfa Garcia are convinced of this too. The Santo Chalice is the real chalice used during the Last Supper.
The Holy Grail is here in Valencia.
The message of the Holy Chalice is universal. It has to be understood by everyone with their hearts.
The yearning for salvation and an ancient myth. From a scientific point of view, there's still no evidence. The search for the Grail will most likely continue.